Her heartbeat whispered like static against the dying wind, and somewhere beneath the burning horizon, love still dared to breathe inside a world that had forgotten warmth. When she closed her eyes, she imagined a touch that wasn't metal, a voice that wasn't cold command, a whisper that promised she was more than the sentence carved against her name. The twin suns of Verberelion hung heavy in the crimson sky, burning the land until even shadows sought mercy. Beneath them, Arieth hung suspended between agony and silence. The Dominion's plasma restraints glowed against her silver skin, thin trails of smoke spiraling upward where the cuffs bit through flesh. Every nerve screamed beneath the unrelenting heat. Her breath came in shivers, though the world burned. Around her, the plaza stretched wide, white stone reflecting light so fierce it blurred her vision. Drones circled above, projecting her image for the city to witness, a public spectacle of justice. "Traitor," a metallic voice boomed from the speakers. "Arieth of House Vera, guilty of high treason, sentence pending." The crowd gathered but kept their distance. Rows of emotionless faces stared up at the holographic feed, their mirrored eyes recording everything, judging nothing. The Zyra Dominion prided itself on logic. Emotion had long been outlawed, replaced by devotion to perfect order. Compassion was weakness. Pain was proof of failure. Arieth's voice trembled as she spoke into the empty air. "I never sold the coordinates. I never betrayed you," but even she knew her words would vanish before they reached a single ear. The Dominion didn't listen. It calculated. Her mind replayed the moment that destroyed her life, the night in the engine core, the soft hum of reactors, and Commander Lorek's voice behind her. He had reached for her shoulder, his words smooth and poisonous. "You're wasted here, Arieth. I could give you more than work. I could give you power." She had refused, pushing him away. His eyes turned cold. Within a cycle, her access codes were used to transmit stolen data. When the system traced the leak, her identity flashed red across every terminal. The evidence was perfect, the punishment absolute. The suns crawled higher, her throat cracked with dryness. The pain dulled into something worse, numb acceptance, until the sound came. Boots on metal, slow, heavy, human. No one on Verelion walked like that. The Zyra floated or glided with their anti-grav belts. They made no sound when they moved. But this was deliberate, defiant. From the edge of the crowd stepped a figure in tattered sand gear, visor reflecting the suns. A human, rare, unwelcome, and out of place. His shoulders bore the dust of travel, and his hands, though rough, moved with precision. Ronan Holt, a salvage pilot stranded months ago after his trade vessel was impounded. To most Zira, he was an inferior curiosity. To Arieth, he was the only living soul who looked at her with eyes that saw. The guards aimed plasma rifles as he walked forward. "This area is restricted," one hissed. Ronan didn't stop. His visor polarized to hide his eyes, but his voice carried through the static of the comms. "I've seen executions on 100 worlds," he said quietly, "but I've never seen one that looked this wrong." Lurek emerged from the crowd, his white uniform gleaming, arrogance wrapped around him like armor. "Stand down, human." "She's a criminal," Ronan tilted his head. "Then show me proof. Not just a broadcast, you question the Dominion's judgment." "I question everything that needs silence to stay powerful," Ronan replied, his tone calm, almost weary. The guards raised their rifles. Arieth's vision blurred. "Leave," she managed to whisper, her voice almost lost to the wind. "They'll kill you too." Ronan met her gaze, and in that glance something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps destiny. "Then we'll make it worth dying for." He moved faster than the guards expected. His hand flicked to his belt, triggering an electromagnetic pulse from a salvage disruptor. The plasma restraints sparked once, twice, then shattered. The explosion of light threw sand and static into the air. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Arieth fell forward, collapsing into Ronan's arms. He caught her as if she were made of glass. "Can you stand?" She nodded weakly. "They'll hunt you now." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried no logic, only courage. "Then let's give them something to chase." The alarms wailed across the plaza. Drones dived, firing plasma bolts. Ronan grabbed a fallen guard's weapon. Twisting mid-step, shooting down a drone with a single pulse. Arieth, still dizzy, reached out her hand, channeling residual energy from her cuffs into a shield that rippled like liquid light. The bolts disintegrated against it. Together, they ran. Through alleys carved in obsidian steel, through corridors humming with surveillance nodes. Ronan's heartbeat matched the rhythm of her ragged breaths. He had no plan, only instinct. And that instinct screamed that she deserved to live. They reached the freight platform, a skeletal structure overlooking the canyon. The wind howled, carrying the scent of dust and ionized metal. Below them, the crimson expanse stretched endlessly, a wasteland few dared to cross. "Jump," Ronan said. Arieth stared at him, disbelief flickering in her eyes. "There's nothing but storm down there." "Better a storm than a cage." The sound of boots echoed behind them. Dominion guards closing in. Lurek's voice carried through the comlink, venomous and cold. "You think a human can save you, Arieth? He's a parasite. You'll die beside him, and history will erase you both." She looked at Ronan. The suns burned behind him, painting his outline in gold. In that light, he looked nothing like a parasite. He looked like something her world had lost long ago. Faith. She took his hand. Together they leapt. Wind tore at them, the world blurring into streaks of red and gold. Ronan activated his grav pack, slowing their fall just enough to survive the landing. They crashed into sand, rolling hard. Pain exploded through her ribs, but she was alive. For a long moment, they lay side by side beneath the twin suns, the sky above them shifting from blinding white to a deep, molten amber. Arieth turned her head towards him. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why risk everything for me?" Ronan sat up, brushing sand from his gloves. "Because every empire I've ever seen looks the same, built on lies held up by fear. Someone has to be the first to stand against it." He looked at her, eyes fierce and kind all at once. "And you already did." Her throat tightened. "I wasn't brave. I was foolish." He shook his head. "No, you were human." She blinked at the word, its meaning foreign yet beautiful. Her world had erased it centuries ago, the idea of heart over reason. But hearing it now, it felt like the first breath after drowning. The horizon shimmered. In the distance, dust columns marked the approach of Dominion skiffs. They had only minutes. Ronan checked his gear, slinging his rifle over his back. "We move east. There's an old comm relay. I can hide us." Arieth tried to stand, her legs weak. He steadied her, his hand firm around hers. The warmth of his skin against her cool metallic tone sent a strange current through her, something no data chart could define. They started walking, shadows stretching long behind them. Every step through the shifting dunes felt like defiance. Every heartbeat whispered that the story of a condemned alien and a reckless human had just begun. As the suns dipped lower, their light merged into one long, bleeding horizon, painting the world in fire. The Dominion believed they had erased rebellion. But beneath those dying skies, a new truth was born. Two souls, one reasonless, one emotional, bound by something stronger than both, belief. And as the wind howled across the desert, Arieth glanced at Ronan once more. His silhouette moved ahead, steady and unyielding. For the first time in her life, she didn't see logic as strength or obedience as safety. She saw a man who had no power, no rank, no perfection, and yet carried a courage that could shake worlds. Her pulse steadied, her fear faded. The silence between them spoke louder than the Dominion's judgment. It whispered of storms coming, not of dust, but of change. And far above, unseen beyond the glare of the suns, a Dominion satellite recorded everything. One phrase pulsed across its feed, sent to every command unit orbiting the planet. Subject Arieth escaped, assisted by human operative. Immediate termination authorized. But down in the desert, beneath the glowing horizon, neither of them cared. Because for the first time, both alien and human had something worth dying for, and an empire worth defying. The wind screamed through the canyons like an animal wounded by light, carrying the taste of metal and storm. Beneath that crimson sky, Arieth and Ronan ran until their legs threatened to give out. The dunes of the crimson expanse shifted beneath them, alive with magnetic currents that tore at their gear and scattered sparks across the horizon. Above, the binary suns bled through the clouds, washing the world in molten orange. Every breath Arieth took burned. Her lungs weren't made for this kind of air. Too dry, too raw. The plasma cuffs had scorched rings into her skin, the pain flaring each time she stumbled. Ronan glanced back again and again, his face streaked with dust, his jaw set in grim determination. They reached the jagged ruins of what once had been a fuel depot, a skeleton of steel girders and shattered domes half buried in sand. Ronan led her beneath the collapsed roof, where shadows offered brief shelter from the relentless heat. "Sit," he said, kneeling beside her. "You need water." She shook her head. "Save it. Your species needs hydration more frequently than mine." He grinned faintly, pulling a canister from his pack. "Maybe. But your voice sounds like sandpaper." "Drink anyway?" The liquid tasted bitter, but it cooled her throat. For a moment, they simply listened. The hum of wind through broken metal, the distant thunder of patrol engines echoing across the dunes. The Dominion would be tracking them with drones reading heat signatures, analyzing every molecule of displaced air. Arieth broke the silence first. "You shouldn't have done that." "Saving me shouldn't?" He laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. "You talk like freedom's the crime. In the Dominion, it is. Then it's a law that deserves braving." She turned her gaze to him. His eyes were unlike hers, warm, Elanis, unguarded. The Zaira called humans impulsive, inefficient, ruled by chaos. Yet here was one who'd faced death for someone he'd never met. That defied all logic, and for the first time, she didn't want logic to explain it. The wind rose, scattering red dust through the ruins. Ronan stood, scanning the horizon. "We can't stay here long." The expanse is unstable this time of cycle. Sandstorms hit hard and fast. He opened a small holographic map on his wrist projector, a faint blue flicker against the rusted walls. "There's an old comm relay 12 kilometers east. If we reach it before sundown, we can hide our biosigns." Arieth nodded and rose carefully. Her legs ached, her movement slow. Ronan adjusted his pack and offered his hand. She hesitated only a second before taking it. His grip was rough, calloused from years of labor, yet steady in a way that anchored her amid chaos. They moved again through the wasteland, following the skeletal ridges of stone. The expanse was a dead zone. No vegetation, no settlements, just endless dunes that shifted like liquid under the pull of twin gravitational fields. Static crackled in the air. Grains of sand glowed faintly blue from magnetic friction. Hours passed. The suns began their slow descent, the temperature dropping sharply. Long shadows stretched across the plain, swallowing everything in deep indigo. Ronan spotted movement ahead, fragments of an antenna jutting from a mound of rock. "That's our shelter." By the time they reached it, darkness had already fallen. The relay tower leaned at an angle, its solar fins shattered, wires hanging like vines. Inside, the air smelled of rust and dust. Ronan used his toolkit to power up a small generator, coaxing a faint light from its dying circuits. Arieth sank against the wall, exhaustion finally breaking through her discipline. Her hands trembled as she tried to seal the burns on her wrists with a healing patch, but the adhesive refused to hold. Ronan noticed and crouched beside her. "Let me." She started to protest, but his hands were already moving, gentle, sure, wrapping a thin layer of nanofiber around her wounds. "You've done this before," she murmured. "Too many times. Salvage work isn't exactly safe." She studied him silently while he worked. His hair, once dark, was streaked with fine dust. Sweat clung to his temples, yet his focus never wavered, his touch steady. When he finished, he met her gaze. "There. Should hold until we find proper medjol." "Thank you," she said softly. He leaned back against the opposite wall, exhaling. "You know, your people think emotion is a disease, but you don't seem sick to me." Her lips curved slightly. "We evolved past emotion to prevent case. Logic maintains order, and order kills empathy," he replied quietly. "I've seen it on every planet that tries to perfect itself." For a moment, silence filled the relay. The generator hummed weakly. The storm outside began to gather, a low growl that vibrated through the floor. Arieth drew her knees close, watching the shadows dance along the walls. "We weren't always like this," she said finally. Centuries ago, the Sci-Fi felt as deeply as humans do. But emotion led to war. Entire continents burned. So the leaders purged feeling from our neural code. They thought peace would follow. Did it? For a while, she whispered. Then peace became obedience. The storm struck with a roar. Dust slammed against the structure, rattling the walls. Lightning flashed crimson through the cracks. Ronan moved closer instinctively, shielding her as debris fell from the ceiling. She felt his warmth even through layers of fabric. The proximity made her chest tighten in ways she couldn't quantify. Don't move, he said. The storm will pass soon. Arieth's pulse thrummed in her ears. You risked your life twice today for someone you didn't know. Why? Because someone should, he answered simply. Is that what humanity is? He smiled, a small, tired curve of his lips. It's what it should be. Outside, the wind howled louder, as if protesting the quiet between them. He reached for the small heater in his pack, activating its soft glow. The light reflected off her metallic skin, turning it gold. For the first time, Ronan truly saw her. Not as alien or accused, but as something breathtakingly alive. You're staring, she murmured, voice barely audible above the storm. Can't help it, he said honestly. I've seen galaxies, but none of them ever looked like you. Her eyes softened, color shifting from violet to deep indigo. A Zyra reaction she couldn't suppress. Embarrassment, warmth, maybe something more. Your words are irrational, she said, though her tone lacked conviction. Yeah, he admitted. So is falling for someone the universe says you shouldn't. The silence stretched between them, filled with the heartbeat of the storm. Then the console on the far wall sparked, a beacon signal. Dominion drones were scanning the area. Ronan cursed under his breath, sprinting to the relay controls. They're using orbital sweeps. If they triangulate the generator's heat, we're done. Arieth rose, her body protesting. I can mask the signal, she said, moving to the console beside him. Her fingers danced over the holographic keys, weaving encryption faster than any human system could process. There. It'll read as geothermal interference. He looked at her in admiration. Remind me never to underestimate alien engineers. Remind me never to underestimate human defiance, she replied. The storm began to subside. The wind softened into a mournful whistle. In the quiet aftermath, only the low hum of the heater remained. Ronan set down his rifle and sat beside her. You saved my life back there, you know. I merely prevented waste. You're still useful. He chuckled. Sure, keep telling yourself that. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. Perhaps I didn't want you to die. He turned to her, his expression unreadable. Then we're even. She looked away, but her pulse betrayed her calm. The walls of logic she'd built all her life began to crack, letting something wild and human slip through. Hours later, when the storm had moved east, the stars revealed themselves. Through the shattered ceiling, twin moons rose, casting pale light over the wreckage. Ronan lay back against the floor, eyes tracing constellations unfamiliar to him. You ever wonder what's out there? He asked. Arieth followed his gaze. We mapped every system within reach. There is nothing left unknown. He smiled faintly. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. She turned to him, curious. Why? Because mystery is what keeps us alive. It's what makes the universe worth exploring. She considered that in silence. Mystery, a concept her people had erased. Yet here, beside a man who spoke with fire instead of formulas, she began to understand its beauty. Sleep came slowly. The generator dimmed to conserve power. The night hummed with quiet electricity, alive with new beginnings. Just before she drifted off, Arieth heard Ronan murmur, half dreaming, Tomorrow we find the proof that saves you. I swear it, she whispered back, so softly even the night had to lean close to hear. And maybe, Ronan Holt, you'll save more than that. Outside, the desert sighed beneath the fading storm, carrying sparks of blue across the dunes, fragments of energy dancing like fireflies. In that vast silence, something invisible but unstoppable began to bloom. Trust. And from that fragile seed, destiny was already taking root, waiting for the storm to come again. The first light of dawn sliced across the dunes, painting the desert in molten copper. Arieth awoke to the faint hum of Ronan's portable scanner, its blue glow tracing her features. He was kneeling nearby, studying the horizon, every muscle tense beneath his weathered jacket. The storm had wiped their tracks clean, but not their scent. Dominion patrols would still be hunting, guided by sensors that could taste electricity in the wind. "Something's wrong," he muttered. "The relay's dead quiet." Too quiet, Arieth rose, brushing sand from her clothes. Her limbs ached, yet her mind burned with purpose. "They know we're heading for the ruined archive. It's the only place I could retrieve the evidence." He turned toward her. "That's where you hid the data?" She nodded, silver hair catching the light. "Not hid, erased. But the archive stores quantum echoes. If I can recover them, I can prove Lurek fabricated the transmissions." Ronan slung his pack over his shoulder. "Then we find your ghost before his hunters do." They set out across the expanse again, following the skeletal ridge that pointed toward the mountains. The landscape grew darker as they approached the scar, a canyon carved by a meteor long before any species recorded history. Within its depths, the remains of an ancient research city slept beneath layers of glass and dust. The air shimmered with electromagnetic residue. Their boots left faint blue trails. Arieth stopped at the edge of a fissure. Below lay the ruins of Zyron Vault 9, a lattice of shattered towers half buried in obsidian sand. "This place was sealed after the War of Reason," she said quietly. "It holds the records the Dominion never wanted recovered." Ronan glanced down. "Then it's exactly where we belong." They descended using rusted cables, the air growing colder with each level. Inside, the darkness felt alive, humming, pulsing, whispering fragments of lost data. Arieth activated her wrist light, scanning symbols etched along the corridor walls. "Every line here is code," she murmured. "History rewritten, memory deleted. Can you bring it back?" "I can try." They reached the main archive chamber, a vast sphere lined with broken data conduits and dead screens. At the center floated a fractured, crystalline core faintly glowing with residual energy. Arieth approached it like a priest before an altar, her fingers trembling as she placed the quantum key against its surface. Lines of light shot outward, crawling across the chamber like veins awakening after centuries of sleep. Data fragments flickered in midair. Images, voices, numbers. A storm of forgotten truth. Among them appeared Lurek's personal log, distorted but recognizable. Ronan stepped closer. "Can you stabilize it?" Arieth adjusted the key's alignment, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her. "Yes, almost there." Then the recording cleared, and the words that followed froze them both. "Transmission complete. The human smugglers will receive payment once the feast coordinates are traced to Arieth's terminal. She'll take the fall, and the council will never suspect my dealings." "Efficiency demands sacrifice," the log ended. The silence that followed was heavier than any storm. Ronan exhaled slowly. "That's it." The bastard confessed. Arieth stared at the floating symbols. Her chest tightened. "He used my name to hide his crimes. And the Dominion called that justice." Her voice broke, rage and sorrow twisting together. Ronan stepped beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Now you have the truth. But truth means nothing if you die with it." Before she could answer, the chamber lights flickered, red flashes pulsating in rhythmic warning. A metallic voice echoed through the tunnels. "Unauthorized presence detected. Initiating termination protocol." Ronan cursed under his breath. "They found us." From the upper shafts descended hunter drones, sleek and black, wings slicing through the dust. Plasma bolts seared the walls. Arieth ducked behind a console as Ronan fired his rifle, the blast lighting his face in blue and gold. Two drones fell in sparks, but more replaced them. She tore open a conduit, rerouting power to the main core. "Cover me," she shouted. "I can overload the magnetic grid." He fired again, moving between pillars with soldier's precision. "Just don't fry us in the process." Electricity crackled around the sphere as Arieth connected the final circuit. The floor vibrated, and a surge of energy burst outward, collapsing the drones mid-flight. Their metal bodies hit the ground with hollow thuds, smoke curling upward. The silence afterward was shattered by a slow, mocking clap. Lorek emerged from the far tunnel, flanked by soldiers in Dominion armor. His expression was a mix of triumph and disdain. Ingenious, Arieth. I wondered how long it would take for you to crawl back here. Her jaw tightened. You came yourself? Afraid your lies might unravel? He smiled thinly. I came to end a mistake I made. You should have accepted my offer when you had the chance. His gaze flicked to Ronan, and the human. How poetic. A primitive rescuer for a fallen genius. Ronan stepped forward, gun raised. You'll regret calling me that. Lurek's soldiers fanned out, rifles aimed. Drop it, Lurek warned. Ronan's grip didn't waver. You're going to face the council, and you're going to confess. Or I'll make sure your empire does it for you, Mamu, Lurek chuckled. Do you really think truth matters to them? Power writes the laws, human Arieth's voice cut through the tension like glass. Then I'll rewrite the laws myself. She hurled the quantum key toward the central core. It embedded itself, triggering a cascade of light that filled the chamber. Every wall became a screen, projecting Lurek's confession, his crimes, his betrayal. The data streamed upward through the vents, broadcasting across the Dominion's network. Lurek's composure cracked. Stop her! Gunfire erupted. Ronan leapt forward, firing short, controlled bursts. The room turned into chaos, plasma streaks carving through the dust. He ducked behind a fallen console, reloading while Arieth diverted energy fields to block the soldier's line of sight. Lurek grabbed a blade from his belt, a plasma-edged weapon glowing violet. You always were clever, he sneered, but cleverness won't save you. He lunged. Arieth dodged the first strike, sparks flying as the blade sliced through metal. Ronan moved to intercept, blocking Lurek's path with a piece of broken conduit. The plasma hissed against it, melting steel. Ronan's muscles strained, but he held firm. You don't scare easy, human, Lurek hissed. I've met scarier men who thought they were gods, Ronan replied, shoving back hard. Arieth seized the moment, channeling energy through her hands. The residual charge from the archive's core flowed into her body, forming bright arcs around her fingers. She thrust forward, releasing a pulse that sent Lurek sprawling across the floor. He hit the wall, gasping, armor sparking. The soldiers hesitated, unnerved by the display of forbidden power. Arieth stood over him, eyes burning with violet light. You framed me because I refused you, she said quietly. Now the entire Dominion knows. Lurek's lip curled, rage twisting his face. They'll never believe a creature who let a human corrupt her. Ronan stepped beside her, gun steady. Then let's give them something to remember. The ceiling trembled as explosions echoed from above, external drones breaching the upper layers. Ronan grabbed Arieth's wrist. We have to go. She hesitated, glancing at the damaged core. If we leave now, they can still erase the data. Then destroy the archive. Make it permanent. Arieth closed her eyes, focusing the charge still coursing through her. When she released it, a blinding pulse surged through the core. The structure imploded in on itself, light swallowing darkness. Lurek screamed as the chamber disintegrated around them. Ronan pulled her close, activating his grav pack. The blast wave carried them upward through collapsing tunnels, debris raining from all sides. They burst into open air just as the archive sank beneath the sand in a storm of fire and glass. For a moment, there was only silence, the wind howling mournfully over the ruins. Arieth stared at the crater glowing below them. It's gone, she whispered. Everything. Ronan placed a hand on her shoulder. Not everything. You've got the truth. And the galaxy just heard it. Far above, Dominion satellites flickered with interference. Across the network, Lurek's confession streamed into public channels before collapsing under counterscripts. The damage was done. The lie could not be unspoken. Arieth turned to Ronan. They'll send fleets now. We've become symbols of rebellion. He smiled faintly, eyes reflecting the twin suns rising again. Then it's about time someone gave them a reason to fear humanity. She met his gaze, breath-catching. You risked your life for a cause that isn't yours. He shrugged. Maybe it is now. The morning light spilled across their faces, washing away the night's terror. The desert stretched endless before them, vast and unbroken. Somewhere beyond that horizon waited justice or death. Either way, neither of them would run again. Because truth, once free, doesn't crawl back into silence. It burns, it spreads, and it remakes the world in its fire. And beneath the rising suns, two figures walked into that fire together, one born of logic, the other of instinct, united by the single thing no empire could ever replicate, the will to do what was right, no matter the cost. Arieth stood atop the fractured ridge overlooking the city, her silver skin streaked with ash, her hair tangled from the climb. The plasma burns on her wrists still throbbed, but her heart pulsed stronger than pain. The data broadcast from the ruined archive had spread across the network before collapsing. The message had reached enough eyes. The lie was dying, and the truth refused to vanish. Behind her, Ronan finished sealing a wound on his shoulder with a quick spray of biofoam. His jacket was torn, his face shadowed by exhaustion. Yet his eyes carried the same unbreakable flame that had burned since the day he stepped into that plaza. He looked toward the city where soldiers gathered near the central tower. "They're forming a blockade," he said, loading his weapon. "You still want to go in there?" Arieth nodded. "If we run now, Lurek's father will twist the story. The Dominion will claim we forged the evidence. I have to face them." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Then I'm with you." Ronan muttered under his breath. "You make him sound like a poet." Arieth lifted her chin, stepping into the open square. "You've built a civilization on silence," she said, her voice echoing through the plaza. "But silence isn't peace." Its fear gasps rippled through the crowd. Citizens watched from balconies, uncertain, caught between obedience and awakening. Varen sneered, "Your words mean nothing. The proof you broadcast was falsified. You've tainted your own kind with the infection of human sentiment." She met his gaze. "Logic can be bent by those who fear truth, but emotion," she placed her hand over her chest, "is beyond your control." Ronan stepped beside her, raising his rifle. "And we've got the recording that proves it." He activated a hollow emitter on his wrist. The air shimmered and Lurek's confession played again, clearer this time, its tone cold and undeniable. Every word poured into the crowd like molten glass. Varen's composure cracked, his eyes narrowing. "End the transmission," he ordered. But none of the soldiers moved. For the first time, their helmets tilted toward each other, hesitating. One by one, their rifles lowered. "Listen to it," Arieth pleaded. "He sacrificed truth for power. How many others have done the same while you called it order?" The air vibrated with tension. Then, from the back of the formation, a young soldier removed his helmet, his expression uncertain. "Is it true?" he asked softly. Varen's voice thundered. "Hold your ranks! She manipulates you." Before anyone could react, a plasma shot cracked through the square, striking the stone near Arieth's feet. Lurek stepped forward from behind his father. Wounded but alive, his face twisted with hatred. "You think you've won?" "I erased your proof once. I'll erase you this time." He drew his blade, the same violet plasma edge that had once cut through her world, and charged. Ronan moved first, intercepting him mid-swing. The two men collided with bone-rattling force. Sparks flew as blade met metal rifle. Lurek snarled, driving his knee into Ronan's side. Pain flared through the human's ribs, but he countered with a headbutt that broke the commander's rhythm. The blade slashed again, grazing Ronan's arm. Blood sprayed across the dust, sizzling in the heat. Arieth raised her hand, channeling the faint energy still stored in her neural implants. Blue light flared from her fingertips, wrapping Lurek's weapon in an electromagnetic snare. "Enough," she commanded. He turned toward her, eyes wild. "You don't command me." With a roar, he lunged again, and this time the blade struck home, piercing through Ronan's shoulder as he moved to shield her. The world seemed to stop. The smell of burnt fabric filled the air. "Ronan!" Arieth cried, catching him as he fell to one knee. The plasma wound sizzled, smoke rising. He clenched his teeth, forcing a grin. Still, standing. Her vision blurred with rage. Energy crackled around her body, turning her veins into lines of light. The ground vibrated under her feet as she faced Lurek. "You wanted a monster," she said softly. "You made one." She released the charge. Bolts of pure energy spiraled outward, striking Lurek's armor and shattering his shield. He flew backward into the base of a monument, collapsing in a heap. His blade sputtered out beside him, its glow fading to darkness. The square fell silent except for the hum of dying power. Varen stared at his fallen son, then at the woman who had defied them all. "You'll destroy everything we've built," he hissed. "No," Arieth said, kneeling beside Ronan. "We're rebuilding what you buried, the part that remembers how to feel." She pressed her palm against Ronan's chest, channeling healing nanites through his bloodstream. His breathing steadied, but his voice remained faint. "Don't stop now. Finish it." Arieth rose, turning to face the crowd once more. The suns broke through the smoke, their light bathing her in gold. "My people were told that emotion is chaos," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "But without compassion, logic becomes cruelty. We can be both reason and heart, if we choose it." One by one, the citizens began to bow their heads. Soldiers dropped their weapons. The sound of armor hitting stone echoed like thunder. Varen took a step back, realization dawning too late. The Dominion's hold was unraveling. The machine of obedience was cracking under the weight of truth. Arieth turned to him. "This is not the end of the Dominion. It's its rebirth," he said nothing. His empire had fallen silent at last. Ronan struggled to his feet, wincing as he leaned on her for balance. "You did it," he said quietly. "We did it," she corrected. As the crowd dispersed, whispers rose, not of fear, but of hope. Across the city, holograms began to flicker with new symbols. Not the mark of the Dominion, but an open hand surrounded by light. Arieth's emblem. Reborn from exile. They climbed the steps of the central spire together, watching the sun set over a world forever changed. Ronan's arm hung limp, but his spirit stood unbroken. Arieth looked at him, her eyes shimmering like molten glass. "When I met you, I thought emotion was weakness," she said softly. "And now," she smiled faintly, "now I know it's the universe's oldest form of strength." He chuckled, though pain laced the sound. "Guess humans are contagious after all." The twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting their faces in shadow. Above them, the first stars emerged, bright and unblinking. "You'll stay?" she asked. He turned toward her, expression gentle but resolute. "Until you throw me out of your perfect new civilization." Arieth stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't think I could." The wind carried the scent of iron and dust, the same air that had once smelled like despair. Now it smelled like beginnings. Below them, the city lights flickered, not in uniform lines of control, but in a scatter of colors. Chaotic, vibrant, alive. Ronan reached out, his hand brushing hers. "So what do we call this place now?" She looked out at the horizon where fire met sky. "Not Dominion," she said. "Not Empire, just home," he smiled, the word lingering between them like a promise. Above, the warships that once belonged to tyranny now hovered motionless, awaiting new orders. The stars reflected off their hulls like mirrors of change. And beneath those twin suns, beneath a sky that had burned for centuries without mercy, an alien and a human stood side by side, the architects of a new dawn. For the first time in recorded history, Varelian's people looked upward, not in obedience, but in wonder. They whispered two names, one born of steel, the other of fire. Arieth and Ronan, the ones who taught the galaxy that even in a universe ruled by logic, the most powerful force of all was heart. As the suns faded and the stars claimed the sky, their silhouettes stood against the horizon, bound by a truth too vast for words. The truth that no system, no empire, no silence could ever extinguish the spark of humanity once it had touched another soul.